away. Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall. I'll be there for you like I've been there before. I'll be there for you 'cause you're there for me too. You're still in bed at 10 and work again at 8. You burned your breakfast so far, things are going great. Your mother warned you there'd be days like these, but she didn't tell you when the world was brought you down to your knees. And I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall. I'll be there for you like I've been there before. I'll be there for you.
Okay, I am the doctor, and this is the water hose. In this experiment, we're gonna see the pressure of our depression of a hose dropping out. You can see our crew. Camera, look at the crew. We don't have water in the house. We're doing it next to the pool because it's too dangerous. Kids, don't do this, or I'll come for you in your nightmare. Okay, do it.
1, 2, 3.
You can see it goes very hard. That's normal. Harder. Very easy science. Or not, teacher? Okay, we got the pressure, but what happens if we talk it all off? Why do you think this will happen? Yes, explode. Oh!
Okay, so in this first experiment, incompressible fluids in motion are our protagonist. One crucial concept that's gonna help us understand this first experiment is volume flow rate. Volume flow rate is just the volume of fluid that flows to a container in a certain amount of time. It's defined by volume divided by time, and it is constant in any given system. This is crucial. There is another formula we can derive from this one. The calculations and the formulas are shown on the screen, and basically we end up with volume flow rate equals area times speed. Now we can apply this equation to create some fluid truths. Area times speed in any given part of a system equals area times speed in any other given part of the system, because volume flow rate is constant. The larger the area of a section, the slower the liquid will flow through there. The smaller the area, the faster the liquid. We're getting really close to understanding our first experiment, so let's begin to visualize it. Let's imagine a cylinder through which water flows. Its cross-sectional area is very large at one end and very small at another, okay? The one with the large area will actually have water flowing through it much more slowly than the smaller area, because that's the only way that the volumes will be the same.
Okay, for the next part, we're gonna see how Igor, our little pet, does his experiment. His experiment is about something else, but it's the same topic. You're gonna see it. Just sit back, relax, and watch it.
Igor has kindly lent us a real-life model of one of those classic hydraulic engines used to push heavy things up with little force. It's like a superpower. It multiplies your strength, and it's all because of pressure. Let's try to understand it. Pressure is force divided by area. Pressure is evenly distributed throughout a fluid container. How does this help us multiply our strength? Well, let's draw a container like Igor's model. You can see that there are two openings in this container of different areas. When we push down on the fluid from the smaller opening, that force becomes pressure based on the cross-sectional area of the opening. The pressure is distributed evenly across the liquid, and it comes to push up on the piston that is on the larger opening. It does this with most greatest force because, while pressure remains the same, the area is much increased. The factor by which the force has been multiplied, is exposed here. Pressure will come back to haunt us. Remember that.
Welcome, my friends. I'm Doc Doc, and I'm here with my partner,
Dr. Van Dollar.
Dr. Brent Over, and our Igor. Okay, today we're gonna do something very fun. We're gonna do this.
It's a pendulum.
It's a pendulum. Move. We're gonna come here, camera. We don't bite. Well, he does, but that's another story.
And get off the
Okay,
pendulum.
we're gonna do this. My partner. Hey, grab this. Come
I'm gonna
here.
grab your
We're gonna do this. Camera, look at this. We're gonna pull this thing all the way up.
the thing up here.
Yes.
American.
And then just release it. Move.
I'm gonna release the thing.
Release
Are
the
you ready?
thing. This is very simple. It's just moving the thing.
It's nothing.
That thing.
1, 2, 3.
It's 3. And I get no hit.
No hit, cause physics.
Yes.
Physics laws protect Rush.
But you might be wondering, how does a pendulum work?
A classic among physics professors, we knew we had to try it ourselves. It demonstrates the characteristics of a pendulum's movement in a seemingly risky situation that is in fact super safe because of those characteristics. Okay, so simple harmonic motion happens whenever an object is coming back to its equilibrium point from a maximum amplitude because of a restoration force. What the hell does that mean? Well, we actually have a very important and interesting tool to help us understand simple harmonic motion and its equations. It's the fact that it's exactly the same as regular circular motion. What? They look nothing like each other. What the hell do you mean by the fact that they are the same? One of them is moving at a constant speed along a freaking circle, and this is just a line. What the hell? Well, what helps is looking at this circle right on, you know, at 90-degree angle where you only see the circle as if it was one line. And now you can start to see this ball moving back and forth and actually slowing down, or seeming to slow down, because it's actually just going at the same speed, but since we're looking at it head on, it looks like it's slowing down as it reaches the edge, and then it goes faster, and then it goes down at the other edge, and then it goes faster, and it's the fastest at the middle. The fact that simple harmonic motion and circular regular motion are the same helps us a lot, because we can derive a lot about simple harmonic motion from the equations of regular circular motion. Okay? Here's the thing. There are some energy equations that help us find position as a function of time, and a lot of other things. But do we really need to go through them? This is a very simple experiment. All you need to know is position across time is amplitude times cosine of angular frequency of time, which means this is very much defined by the amplitude. Amplitude is equal to max displacement of x, and max displacement of x only happens when velocity is equal to 0. Now, when the movement starts, when time equals 0, velocity equals 0. That makes sense because we actually let go of our boxing thing when it's not moving, of course, and it starts moving. That's key. The amplitude will never physically be able to be greater than it started with, so it won't hit us unless actual external forces are involved. That's very important. But if no external forces are involved, everything's perfect.
But remember, man, if you wanna make a pendulum at home, remember to not put any outside forces on your pendulum, like air.
No injuries.
No injuries.
No
guys.
injuries. Look at this. No injuries.
No, Igor, do not do that! Hello, teacher. It turns out that while brainstorming with our brainstorming setup right here, we found out a very interesting property of pressure in a container. Without further ado, let me present to you the artificial lung experiment.
To take a little while. Now we're gonna set all the air. It's gonna live. Kind of fun.
zoom in into that if you want.
Come,
Oh,
come,
yeah,
come
maybe.
closer, come closer. Oh, zoom in, zoom in.
Oh yeah.
As you can see, it starts to get pressure.
Yeah, baby. Just like that.
And also the level water, the level of water rises, right?
As the air goes up.
This is actually not very right, but I have to explain it here.
So, we weren't planning to do this experiment. It's actually a surprise to us. We were not planning to do it. We were just playing around. I don't know if you realized, I think it's quite noticeable, but our sketch plan, because this is a sketch, is, or originally was, to have two terrible experiments, you know, the pendulum and the hose that don't work for obvious reasons, and a third experiment that does work, which is Igor's model, which does work. But we were playing around on the day of recording, after having finished, when I was in the water, and Jorge was too. And we found out, just by playing, that we could do the thing with the thing, you know? That they imploded and it was so cool, and I looked into it, and it's actually the longest and most complex experiment in this evidence. Let's begin. Pressure is the protagonist of this surprise experiment. But it is the protagonist in two very different ways. The first is the vacuum that we're being created by sucking. Sucking? We'll get back to that. All the air out of the container. The thick layer of water sealed the jug in such a way that it wouldn't allow for more air to come in. The jug started caving in on itself, not because of Ruben's suck force, known as Fs, as it may seem at first. The real culprit was atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is really great, both superlatively and in terms of magnitude. It keeps us and the rest of the planet alive, but only because we've gotten used to the magnitude of its incredible force. Atmospheric pressure, or 1 atm, as it is a very important unit of pressure too, is equal to 101.13 kilopascal, or roughly 100,000 pascals. Sorry. It constantly presses down on us. How do the world and us survive? For objects that have air below them, such as tables or roofs, atmospheric pressure pressing against them from below is almost exactly the same as atmospheric pressure pressing from above. The reason that it's not exactly the same is that pressure changes with elevation. This makes complete sense once you consider that pressure is density times gravity times the height of air above a certain point. The 1 atm unit considers pressure at sea level in France. There's actually a very cool experiment that Uriel is gonna show us right now, showing that that's like a simple version of this first side of our experiment that's actually 2 parts. It's amazing, teacher. It's actually wonderful. Something similar to this, like imploding, is happening in the experiment, as pressure in the jug is reduced by Ruben's suck force. The surrounding atm pressure presses on the bottle from both directions, or actually from all directions. Our jug experiment is in this way very similar to a much simpler, much more popular one that we already showed. Anyways, now let's go on to the crazy part. How is Ruben sucking air out of the container? Well, scientifically, nothing sucks. You cannot suck things out. That's not a thing that happens in nature. The way we breathe is way cooler than that. Our lungs expand, and so, of course, air trying to expand ever so much because of its pressure goes into our lungs. This is how we use straws. We make our lungs bigger, and so air goes into our lungs, and this air is coming directly from the straw. Since the straw is like, you know, we got our mouth closed, as like it becomes like an extension of our bodies, you know. So anyways, this is why actually trying to drink from a straw that's broken is incredibly difficult, because if the system isn't closed, the air is just gonna, you know, leak out. But in a closed system, Ruben and whoever makes their lungs bigger, air goes to fill those lungs, and then there's a little bit of a vacuum left. And so the liquid climbs up that vacuum into our mouths, and we have a fantastic smoothie. So here's the thing. That's what's actually happening with Ruben, and also with Uriel in this take, okay? That you're seeing right now. Anyways, that is so cool, and you can always tell your family and people around you that no, they don't suck. Because scientifically, nothing sucks. How is that for an evidence?